If you're watching this, there's a good chance you still trust the government. At least a little bit. You probably think that even if they're corrupt, they still exist to protect you, to keep peace and guard your rights. But today we need to talk about the danger of that assumption and the silent trap you fall into the second you believe they have the best interest at heart. Because if you look at history and if you look at how political systems actually work, trusting the government is the fastest way to lose everything that makes you a human being. I want you to look at the image that represents this trust. Imagine lying flat on your back, staring at the small circle of a blue sky from 6 feet under, with 6 polite politicians and bureaucrats standing at the edge of the pit looking down at you. One of them clears their throat and tells you they're only doing this for the greater good and starts shoveling dirt over your face. That is exact of what happens when you hand over your boundaries to the state and they tell you it's for society. Here's the truth you're missing while you go about your everyday life. Your rights aren't a generous gift, and they definitely do not come from the government. The second you accept that you can trade your human rights away for the sake of the group, you stop being a person and become an asset, or worse, a sacrifice. We have been trained to believe that safety is a simple deal we make with a boss where we hand over a little bit of our freedom in exchange for protection. But if a politician is the one who grants you the right, it is not the right, it is just a temporary privilege they can cancel the second you become inconvenient. Let's bring this down to a scale that is slightly embarrassing. A few years ago, imagine you shared a house with 3 other people, and one of them was a natural planner who made spreadsheets for fun. He decided for the peace and order of the household to create a chore chart. At first it was harmless, but within a month he was monitoring your trash outputs, issuing fines for unwanted forks, and deciding who could use the kitchen at night. You went along with it because you wanted to stay with peace, sacrificing your simple daily freedom for the greater good of a clean house. But one night, you sat in the room hungry and waiting for your kitchen permission, and just realized that for a second. You were paying fines to a roommate who didn't even own the house just because you're too scared of a little conflict to say no. You let him build a miniature government in your living room, and you're the one who handed him the gravel. This is what political theory calls the state of nature. Before there are laws, police officers, or tax collectors, there is just you, your neighbor, and the fence between you. The greater philosopher John Locke argued that in this natural state you have perfect freedom to your own body, your own work of your land and hands, and decide how to live. But Locke also introduced a fatal flaw in this freedom. If someone climbs over your fence and steals your apples, you have to be your own police officer. You have to catch them, judge them, and punish them yourself. Let's say Bob steals your apples, so you punch Bob in the face. Then Bob's brother burns your barn down. Your cousin shoots Bob's horse, and suddenly the whole neighborhood is on fire. All of this chaos happens because of one single apple, which shows the danger of personal justice. Safety is a full-blown time job, so we naturally look for an escape. We look for someone else to carry the fight because we want to outsource our survival, and that is exact moment we set the trap for ourselves. To stop the feuds, we do what any sensible group of people does when we hate hard work. We outsource it. Imagine a group of neighbors who are tired of guarding their own apples, so they decide to hire the biggest, toughest guy on the street to do it for them. They pay him $10 a week, and in exchange he patrols the block and keeps the thieves away. Robert Nozick calls this Mutual Protection Association, which starts as a simple business transaction where you pay for safety and they deliver it. Soon they offer different security packages to make more money. The bronze package gets you a guy with a stick, the silver package gets you 3 guys with shields, and gold package builds a stone wall around your property. It's just like the modern streaming subscriptions, but for your actual life. But eventually the next block hires a different tough guy, and one day a client from your block accuses their client of stealing. The 2 tough guys meet in the middle of the street, where they can either start a war or they can negotiate. Over time, through mergers, acquisitions, and a few broken noses, one single agency wins the turf war and becomes the only game in town. Nozick calls this the Dominant Protection Agency, and this is where the trouble starts. This dominant agency does 2 things that should make your skin crawl. First, it claims a monopoly on force, telling you what you cannot fight back and that only they are allowed to punish people. Second, it forces everyone to buy protection, which means if you want to protect your own apples, they will literally disarm you. But since they are stopping you from protecting yourself, they have to compensate you by protecting you for free. Noise split this transaction into two distinct stages. The first is the ultra minimal state, which is like a guard who only protects people who buy a ticket, standing by while non-payers get beat up. But then the guard realizes this is dangerous and moves to the second stage, which is minimal state. He tells the independents they cannot defend themselves, but he pays for their protection by taxing the paying client. No one voted on this, no contracts were ever signed. A private security company just became a state through the invisible hand of the market. It is a government that does only one thing. It stops theft, violence, and broken contracts, but the security guard is not your master, even though we let them write rules for the greater good. And that is when the shovel starts digging. The grand defense of modern state is built on a math problem. In 1971, a philosopher named John Rawls wrote a famous book that became the Bible of modern government, proposing a thought experiment called the Veil of Ignorance. Imagine you're waiting to be born. You have no idea who you will be in terms of wealth, health, or intelligence. From behind this veil, Rawls argued you would want a system that protects the person at the very bottom, agreeing to redistribute wealth and compromise individual rights for collective safety. This is the intellectual spine of the greater good. It sounds beautiful and it sounds fair, but it's a trap. Nozick looked at this math problem and found the fatal flaw. It treats your life, your talents, and your efforts as a giant pile of community property. If the state can take your time or money to help someone else, they're treating you as a means to an end, using you as a tool. But you are an end in yourself and you cannot cross boundaries even with consent. Nozick asked a terrifying question. What if we allowed assault as long as the victim was compensated? Imagine someone can punch you in the face as long as they write you a check for $100 afterwards. If the check clears, the crime is wiped away. And how would you live under that system? You would walk down the street in constant fear, jumping at every shadow because the fear of the attack itself would ruin your life. This is why your boundaries are absolute and they cannot be traded away for cash or safety. When a government decides it has the right to sacrifice one person for the benefit of many, it ceases to be a protector and becomes a predator. But how does this play out when people actually try to execute this math in real world? Nozick used a basketball player named Wilt Chamberlain to explain this. Imagine society starts with a perfect equal distribution of money where everyone has the exact same amount. Wilt Chamberlain signs a contract with his team. For every ticket sold, he gets 25 cents. Millions of people gladly pay extra quarter to watch him play, standing in line buying tickets because he loves basketball and they love it too. At the end of the year, Wilt has a fortune and the equal distribution is completely ruined. Nozick's point is simple. Liberty upsets pattern. To keep society equal, the state must stop you from spending your money, which means they must treat your voluntary choices as a crime. If you want to see what happens when a government takes this math to its logical extreme, look at France in 1793. Idealists took over the government and called themselves the Committee of Public Safety, led by Maximilien Robespierre, a man obsessed with the greater good. He believed that to save the country, they had to eliminate any threat, famously declaring that virtue without terror is fatal and that terror without virtue is important. They built a monopoly on violence and executed 17,000 people in the name of safety. They weren't monsters, they just believed in math, thinking a few thousand heads in the basket was a cheap price to pay for perfect society. But the math was wrong and the republic collapsed into an anarchy and dictatorship. The road to the grave is always paved with the greater good, and people holding the shovels always start with spreadsheets. We live in a world obsessed with compromises. Every day they tell you to give up on your autonomy for the sake of the team, the company, or the country. We do it to be nice because we don't want to be different and a difficult person in the room, but a convenient boundary is not a boundary. It is just a suggestion. I stopped apologizing for saying no and I stopped letting people trade my time away. If you let them cross a line for their collective convenience, you teach them something. You show them exactly where to dig. Look at the people standing at the edge of your grave. They don't have horns or red skin. They are wearing name tags and holding clipboard. If you don't draw the lines and have courage to say no, you're handing them the shovel. My bet is simple. The next time they ask you to sacrifice your principles, your time, or your peace for society or the team, say no. Watch how angry they become when their philosophies fail, and then you will see your power. They can only bury you if you lie down first, and you were not born to be fertilizer. And this was basic political theory on the government.